Senator, I was very proud to support my friend who was running in that election. That was a piece of political advocacy, and as I was explaining to one of your colleagues earlier, the partisan views or political activity I've had before would play no bearing on my role as a judge.
You're not responding to my question. Can you define for me what constitutes woke ideology? You wrote it. You meant something. I'd just like you to tell us what you meant by that.
Yeah, Senator, in the course of a political campaign, that was a piece that I put out in support of my friend. But as a judicial nominee, I don't think it's appropriate for me to start commenting on political views because as a judge, I would not be applying those partisan or personal views while I was on the bench.
Well, the thing is that this whole idea of woke ideology and DEI, the president has issued an executive order telling all of his administrative agencies to eliminate any support of DEI. And so you're going to get cases that use terms like woke or DEI, et cetera. And so I think it would be good for us to know what you mean by what you wrote. And you're not going to respond. So, okay, there you go.
He wrote it himself, published it under his own name on Breitbart, called on conservatives to defeat the woke ideology invading American schools, and then sat in front of the United States Senate and refused to tell Senator Mazie Hirono what the word even means. Justin Smith is Donald Trump's nominee for a lifetime seat on the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. Hirono had his own words in her hand. What she got back was a man running from his own record in real time. And what that tells you about who is about to sit on one of the most powerful courts in the country should concern every single person watching this.
Thank you. I asked the following two initial questions of all nominees coming before any of the committees on which I sit to ensure the fitness of the nominee to serve. So I will ask you the following two questions. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No.
Mr. Smith, on July 30th, 2024, you wrote a post on Breitbart endorsing a Missouri Attorney General candidate. Do you recall that post?
I do, Senator.
So in that post, you wrote, quote, Republican attorneys general are critical in the fight against the radical left. We need true conservatives to defeat the abortion industrial complex, the lawlessness plaguing blue cities, and the woke ideology invading our schools, end quote. Can you define the word woke?
Senator, I was very proud to support my friend who was running in that election. That was a piece of political advocacy, and as I was explaining to one of your colleagues earlier, the partisan views or political activity I've had before would play no bearing on my role as a judge.
Well, you're not responding to my question. Can you define for me what constitutes woke ideology? You wrote it. You meant something. I'd just like you to tell us what you meant by that.
Yeah, Senator, in the course of a political campaign, that was a piece that I put out in support of my friend. But as a judicial nominee, I don't think it's appropriate for me to start commenting on political views because as a judge, I would not be applying those partisan or personal views while I was on the bench.
Well, the thing is that this whole idea of woke ideology and DEI, the president has issued an executive order telling all of his administrative agencies to eliminate any support of DEI. And so you're going to get cases that use terms like woke or DEI, et cetera. And so I think it would be good for us to know what you mean by what you wrote. And you're not going to respond. So, okay, there you go. You've been asked a number of questions by a number of my colleagues about who won the 2020 election, and you testified today that it is the Electoral College that matters in determining who is the president. So the House and Senate was in the process of certifying the electoral votes on January 6th. Do you acknowledge that rioters on January 6th sought to stop this process to prevent Joe Biden from being the president? If that's a yes or no question.
So I understand that the counting of electoral votes was interrupted on January 6th. I want to be very careful in getting beyond too much further beyond that, because there is still active litigation.
I think it's pretty clear what the rioters' intents were, and in fact, if you don't want to, you won't answer that straightforward question. I have another one. Do you also acknowledge that a number of these rioters, some 1,500 or so of them, were convicted, and that President Trump pardoned them? Do you acknowledge that fact? Yes or no?
I think that is what happened, Senator.
So you represented. I'm glad that you actually acknowledged a factual question that he pardoned all these rioters who are very intent on beating up our police here and trying to stop the counting of the Electoral College. So, Mr. Smith, you have represented President Trump in multiple lawsuits in which he has been found liable for defaming and committing sexual battery against E. Jean Carroll. In these cases, you represented the president in his personal capacity. If a case comes before you in which President Trump's personal interests are heavily implicated, will you recuse yourself?
Senator, I've been very proud to represent the president.
Well, will you
those
recuse
cases.
yourself?
I will recuse from any case I've been personally involved in. For any other case, I would consult the judicial canons and the appropriate recusal rules. I may need to consult with my colleagues.
Well, considering the kind of representation that you've provided President Trump, you do cite the canons of ethics, and the Code of Conduct for United States judges requires a judge to disqualify himself, quote, in a proceeding in which the judge's impartiality might reasonably be questioned, end quote. I would say that in any case involving President Trump's personal interests, you should recuse yourself because it is very clear where your loyalties lie. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hawley.
What Senator Hirono just exposed was not a gaffe. It was a pattern. Justin Smith spent years building a political identity around language like woke ideology, the radical left, and the abortion industrial complex. He published those words in July 2024 in a piece on Breitbart, endorsing a Missouri Attorney General candidate. He signed his name to them. He was proud enough of that record to put it out in public. And then, the moment he sat in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee and was asked the single most basic follow-up question anyone could ask, "Can you define what you meant?" he retreated behind the fiction that answering would be inappropriate for a judicial nominee. A man who built his career on political combat suddenly could not explain the vocabulary of that combat when the cameras were on and the stakes were real. Hirono did not let it go. She walked Smith through the precise legal reason his answer was not optional. President Trump has already signed an executive order directing every federal agency to eliminate DEI programs. That order is being challenged in courts across the country right now. Cases using the exact language Smith wrote, woke ideology, DEI, radical left, are going to land on the 8th Circuit docket. A judge who refuses to define those terms in a confirmation hearing but spent years deploying them as political weapons is not a neutral arbiter. He is a participant in the fight who is asking for a referee's jersey. Hirono saw it, named it, and when Smith still would not answer, she closed with 4 words that said everything. So, okay, there you go. That quiet dismissal was not concession. It was a verdict delivered without raising her voice. The recusal question at the end of the hearing made the picture complete. Hirono asked Smith directly whether he would recuse himself from any case involving President Trump's personal interests, given that Smith has personally represented Trump in the E. Jean Carroll defamation and sexual battery cases. Smith's first response was not yes or no. It was that he had been very proud to represent the president. He answered a loyalty question that nobody asked. Then he said he would only step aside from cases he had been personally involved in, and for everything else he would consult the canons. The judicial canons he cited require recusal whenever a judge's impartiality might reasonably be questioned. A man who is simultaneously Trump's personal attorney, a signatory to a 2020 brief attempting to overturn Biden's election, and a Breitbart contributor calling for conservative victories, is now asking the Senate to trust that his impartiality will never reasonably be questioned. That is not a serious position. It is a tell. Here is what is at stake beyond this hearing room. The Eighth Circuit covers Arkansas, Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, and South Dakota. It handles voting rights cases, immigration cases, federal agency challenges, and civil liberties disputes. A lifetime appointment means Justin Smith could be shaping the law in those 7 states for the next 3 decades. The senators who questioned him will move on to other fights. The confirmation vote will be a single line in a news cycle. What will remain is the judge, ruling on cases involving the very terms he refused to define, the election he refused to call, and the president whose loyalty he could not stop himself from declaring. Hirono gave Smith every opportunity to demonstrate independence. He used every one of them to demonstrate the opposite. If you think the people sitting on federal appeals courts for the next 30 years actually matter, you already know what to do. Share this. The people who need to see it probably won't go looking for it themselves.